with David Dawson's condition worsening and conventional methods proving inadequate. The Dawson family becomes desperate for a solution beyond medical and psychological interventions. During a particularly frightening episode, where David exhibits violent behavior and supernatural phenomena escalate, Sarah and John Dawson come to a harrowing realization: they need to explore spiritual or religious avenues for help. The family starts researching the possibility of exorcism, discovering that it is a ritual performed by religious authorities to expel malevolent spirits or demons. Although initially skeptical about the efficacy and legitimacy of such practices, the desperation drives them to consider it as a last resort. Father Michael O'Reilly is a priest who specializes in spiritual guidance and is known for his empathetic nature and deep faith. He has a reputation for being both cautious and thorough in his approach to cases that involve supernatural claims. Father O'Reilly is a man in his mid-50s, with a calm and reassuring demeanor that contrasts sharply with the gravity of the situations he deals with. His background includes extensive training in theology and a specialized focus on exorcism and spiritual warfare. Father O'Reilly was educated in Catholic theology and has served in various parishes over the years. His training includes studying ancient texts and practices related to spiritual warfare. Though not a frequent practitioner of exorcism, Father O'Reilly has handled several cases involving alleged possession. His approach is cautious, requiring thorough investigation before proceeding with any rituals. Father O'Reilly believes in the reality of spiritual forces but approaches each case with skepticism and a demand for substantial evidence before proceeding with exorcism. He emphasizes the importance of ruling out psychological or medical explanations first. Sarah Dawson reaches out to Father O'Reilly, explaining David's worsening condition and the family's growing concerns. Father O'Reilly initially responds with a degree of skepticism, urging the family to provide detailed documentation of David's symptoms and the efforts they have already made. He is cautious about immediately attributing David's behavior to demonic possession, emphasizing the need for thorough investigation. Father O'Reilly expresses a healthy skepticism about the situation, recognizing the importance of distinguishing between genuine spiritual phenomena and psychological or medical conditions that might present similarly. He outlines his approach to such cases, which involves a detailed investigation of the individual's symptoms, family history, and any other relevant factors. He stresses that an exorcism is not a decision to be taken lightly and must be preceded by rigorous examination. Father O'Reilly agrees to take on the case and begins a series of consultations and observations. The process involves several steps. Father O'Reilly interviews the Dawson family members separately to understand their perspectives and experiences. He gathers detailed accounts of David's symptoms, the family's observations, and the effects of David's behavior on the daily lives. Father O'Reilly observes David during his visits, noting the intense and troubling nature of his symptoms. He witnesses firsthand the supernatural occurrences that have been reported, including unexplained movements of objects and David's disturbing reactions to religious symbols. To ensure a comprehensive evaluation, Father O'Reilly consults with experts in psychology and psychiatry, reviewing David's medical and psychological history. He seeks input from colleagues who have dealt with similar cases, weighing their opinions and experiences. During his investigation, Father O'Reilly performs minor blessings and prayers for David and the Dawson home. These are intended to provide temporary relief and gauge David's reaction to spiritual interventions. As Father O'Reilly spends more time with the Dawson family, he begins to understand the depth of the desperation and the sincerity of their concerns. His skepticism gradually shifts to cautious concern as he observes the intensity of David's symptoms and the apparent ineffectiveness of conventional treatments. Father O'Reilly empathizes with the family's situation and acknowledges their emotional turmoil. His approach becomes more supportive as he recognizes the genuine distress they are experiencing. He reevaluates his initial skepticism in light of the compelling evidence presented by the family's experiences and the observations he has made. After careful consideration, Father O'Reilly decides to proceed with a preliminary exorcism, which is a ritual meant to assess the presence and influence of malevolent entities in a controlled manner. He explains to the Dawson family that this initial exorcism is not a full-scale ritual but rather a test to determine if a more extensive exorcism might be necessary. Father O'Reilly prepares for the ritual by gathering sacred items such as holy water, relics, and prayers specific to the exorcism process. He ensures that the family is aware of the risks and procedures involved. He advises the family on how to prepare spiritually and emotionally for the exorcism. This includes counseling them on what to expect and how to support David during the ritual. The chapter concludes with a sense of anticipation and apprehension as Father O'Reilly prepares to conduct the preliminary exorcism. The Dawson family is both hopeful and fearful, understanding that this could be a turning point in David's ordeal. Father O'Reilly is resolute yet cautious, recognizing the gravity of the situation and the need for a careful, measured approach. The chapter begins with a palpable sense of tension and apprehension as Father Michael O'Reilly prepares to conduct the preliminary exorcism for David Dawson. The Dawson family is on edge, their hopes pinned on this ritual to bring relief to their troubled son. Father O'Reilly carefully assembles the necessary items for the exorcism: holy water, a crucifix, sacred texts, and relics. Each item is chosen with care, intended to invoke divine protection and facilitate the expulsion of malevolent forces. He spends time in prayer and meditation, seeking divine guidance and strength for the ritual. Father O'Reilly's demeanor is calm and focused, although a sense of seriousness underlies his actions. Father O'Reilly advises the Dawson family on how to mentally and emotionally prepare. He stresses the importance of remaining calm and supportive, and he prepares them for the possibility of unsettling or extreme reactions from David during the exorcism. As the exorcism begins, the atmosphere in the Dawson home is charged with an unsettling energy. Father O'Reilly performs the ritual in the living room, which has been prepared as a sacred space for the procedure. The priest starts by blessing the room with holy water, reciting prayers to sanctify the area and ward off any negative influences. He sets up the space with religious symbols and prepares David for the ritual. Father O'Reilly begins chanting traditional prayers and reading passages from the Bible. His voice resonates with authority and solemnity, aiming to invoke divine protection and confront the entity troubling David. From the outset, David reacts strongly to the ritual. His physical distress is evident. He experiences violent tremors, convulsions, and bouts of screaming. His eyes dart frantically, and he displays heightened aggression, directed both at Father O'Reilly and his family. During the exorcism, David's behavior becomes increasingly erratic. Objects in the room start moving on their own, and the temperature fluctuates drastically. The room becomes suffused with a palpable, oppressive atmosphere, further intensifying the family's fear. As the exorcism progresses, Father O'Reilly and the Dawson family begin to gain insight into the nature of the entity affecting David. The entity communicates through David in a chilling, distorted voice. It taunts Father O'Reilly with cryptic messages and threats, revealing a malevolent intelligence. The entity claims to have a deep-seated hatred for humanity and mocks the priest's attempts to expel it. The entity demonstrates knowledge of personal details about the Dawson family and their lives, some of which seem impossible for it to know. This disturbing revelation suggests a deep and unsettling connection to David and his family. Father O'Reilly faces fierce resistance from the entity. Despite his fervent prayers and rituals, the entity refuses to be subdued. It exhibits extraordinary strength and an unyielding will, countering each of the priest's efforts with escalating violence and verbal abuse. The Dawson family is deeply distressed by David's suffering and the visible failure of the exorcism to alleviate his condition. They struggle to maintain their composure and support David, who is in a state of profound torment. As the preliminary exorcism comes to an end, Father O'Reilly is forced to acknowledge that the ritual has not fully resolved David's condition. Although there are brief moments of apparent relief, the underlying malevolent force remains entrenched and active. There is some temporary relief in the form of reduced physical symptoms and a brief period of calm. However, these improvements are short-lived, and David's symptoms quickly return to their previous intensity. Father O'Reilly reflects on the ritual, assessing the strength and nature of the entity. He realizes that a more extensive and forceful exorcism may be necessary to fully confront and expel the malevolent presence. He consults with other experts in the field to devise a more comprehensive strategy. The Dawson family is left in a state of emotional and physical exhaustion. Their hopes for a quick resolution are dashed, and they are faced with the daunting reality of a prolonged struggle. Despite the despair, the family is determined to continue seeking help. They rally around David, offering their support and preparing for the possibility of a more intense and demanding exorcism. The chapter concludes with a sense of unresolved tension and anticipation. Father O'Reilly, having witnessed the entity's power and resistance, prepares for the next steps in the exorcism process. The Dawson family, though disheartened, remains committed to their quest for relief and recovery for David.